All right, so let's talk about touch. Touch has four types of nerves for conducting four different kinds of information. You have some nerves that are devoted to pressure, some for warmth, some for cold, and some for pain. But you can detect way more types of touch than those four, right? So how does your body represent, I don't know, hot? Now, I always like to ask my students in class, how do we do hot? And I get interesting combinations where they're like warm and pain. No, it's not warm and pain. Pressure and warm? No. Nobody wants to go to what it actually is, which is cold and warm. Oh, that's wet. Yeah, cold plus pressure makes wet. Cold plus warm makes hot. So different kinds of combinations can produce the kinds of sensations, the touch sensations that you're completely, confident what they are. Where it gets exciting is when you have pressure plus cold plus warm. So now it's like hot water, right? Your body combines a bunch of those things and your brain interprets what it is. So they can combine, these nerve endings can combine together to convey different kinds of messages to your brain. Okay, so not as much to say about touch apparently that I had to say about vision and hearing, right? How about taste? Maybe I have more to say about that, maybe? Taste. Well, we know that you have four receptors for taste. You have on your tongue, you have some taste buds that are devoted to processing sweet, some that process sour, some that do bitter, and some that do salty. And I'm pretty sure you already have heard about those, so I wanted to maybe you're aware that they have different positions on your tongue and stuff like that. So I wanted to talk a little bit more about how, why these might be important tastes to make sure that your tongue, even no matter what else is going on, your tongue can convey this kind of information. Sweet allows us to consume things that will provide energy. Sour helps us, to be motivated towards consuming acids that we need for digestion and other kinds of healthful things, staving off scurvy and stuff like that. Bitter is a great warning to stay away from this food because it's potentially poisonous. Interesting that a lot of things that we love to eat fall into that category, right? And then salty is something that all animals are motivated towards consuming because it has, the essential sodium that we need to live. Now there's an additional flavor that has that has recently been identified. There have been taste receptors actually identified for this, which is called umami, which is another way of saying savoriness. And this taste receptor drives us towards consuming proteins. Umami is present in meat, and it's also present in things like mushrooms and other kinds of savory, like soy and other things that provide protein for us. So these tastes are the 5 tastes that we know that we have specific receptors in our tongues for processing. So here's a cross-section of somebody's tongue cells, and you can see that there's the papilla, which are the fluffy parts that have the deep grooves between them, but the fluffy parts. The fingery parts are the actual taste receptors, the actual taste cells that will collect the molecules of taste that will pass on to your brain. This is sweet, this is sour, this is salty, bitter. Oh, I thought I had a tongue in here. The tongue is designed so that you have the most densely packed array of sweet receptors on the tip of your tongue. And you have the most densely packed array of bitter receptors at the back of your tongue. If we go back to this array of tastes, sweet provides energy, and so humans are driven towards consuming foods that will provide energy. And so, even in our ancestral history, when we didn't have prepackaged foods and stuff, we had to find those kinds of foods that would provide energy for us. Mom milk is full of it's very sweet, has a ton of energy. Berries, fruits, grains, these all have sweet components to them, and they provide a lot of energy. Pretty much anything that's carbohydrate, starchy laden tastes sweet to our tongue. And so one of the ways that we could ensure that a foodstuff, a thing that we've just encountered as a cave person, and maybe we're moving into a new territory and we've encountered a type of plant or something that we're not familiar with, one of the ways that we could tell whether it has any nutritional value is to determine whether it has any sweet component to it. So you could take just the tip of your tongue and taste the new food, and if your taste receptors perceive sweetness, then you could go to the next level of, weeding out whether it's poison or not, which is, chew up a teeny tiny bit and really, really chew it up so that it gets all over your tongue, so you can look for any acid or savoriness or whatever. If you get a hint of bitter, which we have our most densely packed bitter right towards the back of our tongue, where before we swallow this, we have our last chance to, spit it out. If it tastes bitter at all, probably shouldn't be eating this newfound food, right? It's potentially poisonous. Now, of course, we're human, and our perceptions allow us to realize that, okay, it may have a hint of bitterness, but I know this is food, and so I can consume it. But back, you got to think, when we were trying to establish food from non-food, how beneficial it is to have your sweet receptors on the very tip of your tongue, so you can stick it out and not really commit to find out whether it had any energy or not. And then the bitter receptors at the back of your tongue to really prevent you from swallowing at the very last minute something that could be poisonous. So that's probably why we have that particular constellation of taste buds centered where they are. Also, babies who go around the environment putting stuff in their mouth, they spit out a lot of things that could be potentially harmful for them, probably because babies have overactive bitter receptors. It takes just a hint of bitterness for them to spit the thing out. And they have underactive sweet receptors, so it takes a lot of sweetness for them to be willing to eat something. So that kind of protects babies from eating poisons and directs them towards eating things that are naturally sweet. It's part of the reason why it's hard to kind of teach babies to eat vegetables and things like that, because their rejection of bitterness extends to a lot of vegetables that have only just a hint of bitterness. Thinking of green beans or broccoli, they have a hint of bitterness and they're mostly sweet, but to a baby it's like, oh no, that could be poison, and they spit it out. Okay, our final legit sense that we were going to talk about is smell. And just like taste operates on molecules, smell operates on molecules. So we've got vision and hearing that work on waves, and then we've got taste and smell that work on molecules. Now, smell is very poorly understood, and so I'm not going to say a ton of how exactly it works. All I can tell you is that at the top part of your sinus, you have these olfactory receptor cells that lie in the back, the top part of your sinus, and that are intricately wired to this olfactory bulb, which is just inside, like, your brain cavity. It's not part of your brain, it's just inside the bone. And so the nerves cross through the bone into this olfactory bulb, and then it gets sent to, you'll notice our book says, to the higher regions of the brain. And that's the mystery of olfaction. Where? Where does it go? One current theory about smell is that it first gets processed in the hippocampus, which, if you recall from when we talked in Chapter 2, the hippocampus is the part of the brain that helps us to store memories, particularly emotional ones. And if you think about smell, it's one of those things that can evoke really powerful emotional memories. You may not even specifically remember what the memory is, but you kind of get a feeling when you smell something. And that may be because of its tie to the limbic system and the hippocampus in particular. Another theory is that smell gets stored all over your brain alongside different kinds of memories, and so that really it's more of a memory than it is like the other senses. But it's kind of unclear, let's just put it that way, how we can process so many different odors and stuff like that, and where exactly it goes. Let's go ahead and stop here, and then I'll come back and I'll tell you some really interesting things about our nose. I can't say it's smell, but about our nose in our next section.